Welcome back to Off the Pitch Podcast, the podcast where we chat with individuals working within and shaping the game of soccer from off the pitch. Today's guest is Dan McNally, the VP of Soccer Operations at FC Cincinnati. Together, Matt and I spoke with him about his journey through the sport and all the crazy stories that it takes to turn an idea into an MLS Supporters Shield winning club. I know we enjoyed it, and I know you will too, so let's get into it. All right, well, welcome, Dan, to the podcast. It's amazing to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with me. Thank you.
Yeah, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown of how you ended up in Cincinnati? We know you spent some time coaching at Nova Southeastern and MSUB. Can you just give us a little bit of insight on your journey through those places and how they led you here?
I don't know how long you've got for this podcast. I might be taking you on like a 3-hour journey here, but I'll try and keep it brief. So my title here at FC Cincinnati is Vice President of Soccer Operations. So how I got to that position is kind of a winding road, really. I'm from England, from a town called Blackburn in the northwest of England, and I played at a good level in England. I was in the Blackburn Rovers Academy when I was a young player. And I did an apprenticeship at a club called Bury FC, which was in League One, League Two at the time in England. And I was a good player, but then I got the opportunity to come to America when I was 18 on a 4-year scholarship, to play at Embry-Riddle University in Daytona Beach. So I came over in 1996, almost 28 years ago or whatever it is now. It's a heck of a long time. But I came over to play and study in the US when I was 18, and I played 4 years at Embry-Riddle University. I had an unbelievable experience. There's not too many people who leave Blackburn, England, for Daytona Beach, Florida, when they're 18. So it was a massive change for me. But I loved America right away. It's the land of opportunity, and I've always felt that. Always treated very, very well here. And yeah, so that's how I kind of got my start. I was an All-American player at Embry-Riddle, and I bounced around a little bit, playing a little bit of semi-professionally in the PDL and leagues like that for a couple of years before I really stepped into the coaching world, which was my ambition. And I was the assistant coach for Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I was there for 4 years and had a brilliant time at Nova Southeastern as assistant coach. We were in NCAA Division II. We're in a really strong conference, and I loved my time at Nova Southeastern. I worked alongside the head coach was Giuseppe DiPaolo, who's now working for Inter Miami as well. I think he's the U19 coach at Inter Miami. So a fantastic person, fantastic coach. And I did my 4 years at Nova. But then I was kind of ready for my next challenge. And my next challenge as being an assistant was to be a head coach. And I got the opportunity to be the head coach of Montana State Billings, a Division II school up in Montana. And, if you think leaving Blackburn for Daytona Beach when you're 18 is a shock, try leaving Fort Lauderdale for Billings, Montana when you're 28. That was even a bigger shock. But in a good way, I loved my time in Billings. I was able to build a really good program, a Division II, a really good program. We became nationally ranked. We won a lot of games. I'm still I have the most wins of any coach in the program. I was there for 8 years as the head coach, and we had a ton of success. And I thought maybe Montana was a stepping stone for me in my career as a coach, but I ended up loving the place and had a brilliant experience. I met my future wife, Jenny, when I was in Montana. We had our first, my oldest boy, Liam, was born in Montana. Now I have 2 sons, but Liam was born up there in Montana. But again, after 8 years up there, I wanted to take the next step. And that's when I got the opportunity to be the assistant coach at the University of Cincinnati, which is Division I. At the time, they were in the Big East Conference, so it was kind of a big step. So yeah, we took a big, I would say a risk, but it was definitely the biggest move in my life because when I moved when I was 18, I was just on my own. You know, it was just me I had to worry about. And then when I moved when I was 27 out of Fort Lauderdale to Montana, I was just looking after myself. But when I moved when I was 33, 34, I was married and I had my wife to think about. I had a young child to think about. So it was a really big move and it was a big step. And so I got to Cincinnati, and that's how I got here. And I was working at the University of Cincinnati as the assistant men's soccer coach. And it's kind of a crazy story, but during that time, I met Jeff Berding, who's now he's one of the owners of FC Cincinnati. And kind of a crazy story, really. To make some extra money as an assistant coach because I had a young family, I was coaching club soccer in Cincinnati as well. And I got to know Jeff Berding because I was coaching his son Jack. And we got a little bit friendly. We got chatting and talking and, just general friendship. And then one day in 2015, he said, "Hey, let's go for a coffee." And I thought he was going to kind of talk to me about maybe becoming a director of a local club team or something like that because he was well integrated in the local soccer community. But no, he talked to me, opened his laptop and said, "I've got an idea for a professional soccer franchise here in Cincinnati. We're going to call it FC Cincinnati and we're going to play at Nippert Stadium. And Carl Linder's our primary owner." And he was telling me this, and I thought, well, this sounds unbelievable, but it also sounded so believable in a way that we can make this work. And I took the job. I took the opportunity. I just very, very fortunate that I think it was a good time in my life because the coaching lifestyle is almost very transient, where you move around a lot. And by then I'd had my second boy, Kellen. So I had two sons and we had a house, and my wife wanted a bit more stability than the coaching life. And this kind of came across at the right time. And I took the position, but I was the only employee. I am the first employee. Like the first 2 months of my life at FC Cincinnati was I would take my laptop, not a club laptop, my own laptop, walk into a coffee shop or a Starbucks or a local coffee shop and open my laptop and, all right, what does a professional soccer team need? Well, we need soccer balls. We need corner flags. We need pennies, bibs. We need equipment. We need jerseys. And it got that. That's how it started, right? And every week I'd go and meet Jeff at his house because he was still working at the Bengals at the time. And we'd talk about, right, well, we've got this, we need that, And that's how it started. So, yeah, long story short, all my experiences in soccer as a player and as an assistant coach, maybe at the lower level, really helped me as we started FC Cincinnati because I had all those experiences already established in a way. I knew how to build a soccer team because I'd done it. I'd done it in Montana. I'd done it at Nova Southeastern. So maybe I feel very fortunate, but maybe I was the right man at the right time as well for FC Cincinnati to get this off the ground. So now we have a $400 million stadium. We're in Major League Soccer. We have a 35 million training center. We're signing all these players. We have all these massive games on national TV. My perspective's a little bit different. My first day for FCC, I was on my own with a laptop in a coffee shop. And that was only 9 years ago, nearly now. So kind of wild fellas, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. What traits within you do you think Jeff saw to take you, he knew you as a coach and to take you completely out of a coaching direction? Because you were destined surely for, D1 head coach. Maybe then you push on to pro as a coach. So what was it, do you think, that he saw that was translational to operations?
I'd like to think as he got to know me, I'd like to think I'm a reliable person. I'm kind of detailed orientated. So, I'm it's easy for me to say this, but I'm kind of trustworthy, I would say, in that I take responsibility. So putting that responsibility of starting a professional team on someone's shoulders, you kind of have to have somebody that cares, that's going to be passionate, that's going to be reliable, and also have that knowledge of how to do it. Because in a strange way, my experiences in the US as a player and as a coach, for the most part, we're at a lower level. We're in college soccer and Division two soccer. where you really have to be hands-on and you're not surrounded by dozens of staff kind of supporting you. You have to kind of build it yourself. So I had that knowledge and ability to, all right, how do you go about doing all these kind of foundational things to start a team?
That's awesome. What were some of those lessons then from being a college coach, and maybe if there were any of when you were a youth coach as well, that you kind of leaned into when there was no players to talk to, no team to interact with, and it was that period of kitchen table to first set of players coming in? What were some of the lessons then that you were able to lean into?
Well, great lesson. So one is something that's really important in professional sports is the ability to manage a budget. So when you start a professional franchise, it's not like now where we have huge revenues and all these games and all this money coming in through sponsorships and ticket sales. Back then we had zero. So we had to create a budget, and knowing how to work on a tight budget is really important. That's a skill set on its own. But also just the foundational elements of, okay, a team. When a team arrives here in 2016, that was like 8-9 months after I started. What are the absolute basics that we need? Well, a team needs a home. A team needs a locker room. Where are we going to create that locker room at Nippert Stadium? And we were able to find an area that we were able to turn into kind of a locker room, so a team has a home. Where are the players going to live? We had to find an apartment complex, because in the USL, players aren't earning enough to just, all right, you arrive in town, go and buy a house. Players in the USL aren't in that world. So you have to find accommodation for them. So I was able to go out and find apartments and places to live. Kind of like when you have college players and they come in, you've got to help them kind of, well, are they living in the dorms, or do you have to find, a place for them to live in the city? And then just from an equipment standpoint, I mean, it sounds so basic now. We're this huge company, but what does a team need? Soccer balls, how many? Goals, where'd you buy goals from? Corner flags, where'd you get corner flags from? Team benches, where'd you get them from? The absolute basics, as you boil it all down. Hey, you have to start somewhere. And I just knew how to do all that stuff because of my prior experiences,
But one of the things that we noticed was, since the beginning, since you and Jeff started talking, as we read, MLS expansion always kind of seemed like the plan. Obviously, Don Garber even came to visit in 2016, and there were rumors flying around just in the league after that Cincinnati was going to be one of the next sites for MLS expansion. Was that always the goal? What did the process look like for something that kind of seemingly was already decided?
Well, we had always had huge ambitions right from the start, because obviously I was there for a couple of months on my own, and then we added staff and staff and staff until we launched kind of August of 2015, about 4 months after I started. But the plan was always to take this to Major League Soccer. The goal was never to stay in the USL. The USL was a perfect starting place for us. It's a fantastic league. It offered us a great kind of launch pad to achieve our goals, but the goals was always big to get to Major League Soccer. The key to it, though, is what we have to always think about is that Cincinnati is probably not a city that MLS, pinpoints and goes, that is our next destination in Major League Soccer, because the media market just isn't that big. But what we had to do is to create a situation at Nippert Stadium on game day where we were undeniable, where there is no way MLS can overlook what is happening in Cincinnati. So how do you do that? Well, you create the greatest soccer environment ever in the USL, which we did at Nippert Stadium. We were getting 25,000, 30,000 people out every Saturday to USL games, where there were teams in MLS struggling to get even close to those kind of attendance numbers. So what we did is we kind of said to ourselves, we are going to make Cincinnati impossible for them to overlook. And we knew we had the amazing ownership and the ambition and the fan base here to not only get in MLS, but to thrive and do really well. But yeah, the game day experience at Nippert Stadium, where we started, that's the college stadium at the heart of the University of Cincinnati. That was essential for us, is that just we were like lightning in a bottle, where all of a sudden there's this club in Cincinnati that's getting 25,000 people every week, and what the heck is going on down there? That's kind of the buzz we created,
that, as we read, you guys were just smashing the USL attendance records. And obviously a big part of that was the size of the stadium. But what was it? Do you think it was more that Cincinnati was just ripe for a team like that? Or was it down to more savvy tactics that you guys were doing from a operational front office standpoint to actually get people through the door?
I think it was a perfect storm of all of it. I wouldn't like to think it was all just our genius. I don't think that. I think it was just a combination of Cincinnati's kind of a soccer city. If you think about youth soccer in this city's huge participation, boys and girls soccer. It's got a kind of a European history where there's an Irish-German heritage to Cincinnati. So we always felt that Cincinnati was a good option. The crazy thing was in the early days right after we launched in the fall of 2015, before we'd ever played a game, me and Jeff Berding and our head of ticket sales, Jeff Smith, would get up on Saturday mornings and go to all the bars in the city in Cincinnati that were playing Premier League games on TV, and we'd hand out flyers. Hey, come and watch us this spring. We're FC Cincinnati. And people were like, who are these guys? What are you doing? And, so there's kind of a bit of a humble nature when you've been part of that. Like we were literally going bar to bar. But and then I think I have to give a ton of credit to Jeff Berding, our owner, who has such a great political and business ties in the city. We were able to bring in big sponsors that believed in us, and it gave us relevancy. But I will always feel Nippert Stadium was just a brilliant venue. It was like a coliseum. I always used to tell Jeff, because we there were concerns, we're playing in a football stadium on campus. And I'm like, this place reminds me of like the great old stadiums in Italy or Spain, or do you know what I mean? It's just got this vibe of like, we can turn this into like literally a coliseum. And then we started our supporter groups. And, behind one of the goals, I named the section behind the goal, which is its own other story, the Bailey. And that's where our hardcore supporters go. And it just became the place to be. No one had ever seen it. The thousands of fans were leaving the bars and marching to the games together, and it just became electric. And it's just like a snowball rolling down a hill. Hey, have you been to the FCC game? This thing is like nothing we've ever seen before. But the one thing I really was focused on at Nippert Stadium, and I can't even tell you the amount of work we put into this, is there was never a game we played at Nippert Stadium with football lines on the field. Not one. I refused. I'm like, when you come to our games, you come in for soccer. We respect the University of Cincinnati's football program, but this is soccer. When you walk in here for the first time, you just feel soccer. And that's what we did.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
kind of one of the specific things I wanted to ask about. You guys had to work with the university in terms of using the stadium, and obviously it had gone under a renovation just right before you guys came in as well. What were the kind of specific changes you guys had to make to the stadium to not just get it ready for the USL, but also for the obviously the next step and moving into MLS?
We had to do a lot of work. We had to widen the field, which was a really massive project where we had to make the field wider so we could get the FIFA width, which I think is off the top of my head about 70 yards width you need. So we had to create additional width. We had to invest a lot of money into kind of upgrading the locker rooms that we had on site there at the University of Cincinnati. So it was just a brilliant partnership between ourselves and UC, because that's where we used to practice for 3 years before we built the training center. So every day on the college campus, we would be in the middle of school and we'd be training. And there was some like amazing days because behind the scenes, the University of Cincinnati students, I feel, have an ownership of Nippert Stadium. So we would train. We'd be finished our practice. We would go in our locker room, which was kind of right there at the field. And then you'd hear all this commotion out on the field. And yeah, there'd be like 400 students playing frisbee, eating their lunch out on there. So it was wild. Like the days at University of Cincinnati was crazy. And then the transition between soccer and football to soccer, the work that went into that behind the scenes. I mean, there were times we would have a company come in and scrub off all the football lines and then repaint the soccer lines. And I remember games where we would work through the night And then like an hour before gates were opening, we would be still painting the center circle and the PK spot. Do you know what I mean? It was like crazy. Like it's hard to. I should write a book, honestly. Like the way we built this, I remember for the first game that we played there, we didn't know if we were going to get 500 people, 600 people, 1,000 people. We had 14,000 people for the first game. And then we were like, wow, this is amazing. Second game, a week later, we got 20,000. The third game, 2 weeks after that, we got 23,000. We had about 15 full-time employees. Like it was a madhouse. Do you know what I mean? And then I remember that, and this is where Jeff Berding's a bit of a genius. We were about to play the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And, Pittsburgh Riverhounds are a really good club, but, it's just FC Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Like, it's not exactly got a massive tradition. But Jeff focused it in the city as we hate Pittsburgh because we're the Cincinnati Bengals. They're the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it was nuts. We had, I think, 30,000 people in the stadium, and the atmosphere was absolutely electric. And we won the game. And after the game, the fans are going crazy, and the players are doing a lap of honor. And I just thought to myself, oh my God, we have created something here. And then basically for the next 9 years, it's just been insanity, honestly.
I want to take it back right to the beginning of the season. We read that the first game was against a team from Iceland. And then mid-season, there was a friendly against Crystal Palace. So how did that happen? Because usually you'd think the first game would be against University of Cincinnati's men's team for a new team. But how did you guys land those two teams so early on?
We're not conventional, Matthew. I will tell you that. We've done some things, but the first game was fortunate really because we went down to IMG in Bradenton for preseason and they were there as well. So we got to play them. The funny thing about that game, the first ever FCC game, is we streamed it live and we had a few bars in the city showing it. And it was, pretty people watching, seeing what was going on. Corbin Bone, who was a midfielder for us for a number of years, he still works for the club now. He's great guy, great player. He scored a goal in that first game, first ever FCC game. He hit a volley from about 30 yards that went in the top corner. And to this day, I think it's our greatest ever goal. It's lost to history, but it was an unbelievable strike. So we played them. The Crystal Palace game was legendary here. We got very fortunate, and this is a real behind the scenes how these things come about. So Crystal Palace Premier League team were on a US tour, and they had a game scheduled in Philadelphia to start the trip against the Union. Then they were going to go up to the Vancouver Whitecaps to play in Vancouver. And then they had a game, the middle game, I think, was in Charlotte, in the football stadium, but for whatever reason, it got cancelled. And at the last minute, Crystal Palace were looking to get a game, right, to fill out the tour. An agent reached out to me and basically said, hey, Crystal Palace, they'll come on this date. Do you have a facility? Are you able to do it? And we went, yeah, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. This is going to be great. And then, without giving all the details away, you pay clubs to come and play you, basically. You give them a fee that's kind of set in stone, right? And we were a brand new club. They knew we were doing them a favor. So we paid Palace and the agents a very minimal fee just so that there was a game and that they could come and play a game on their tour. We sold 35,000 tickets for that game in a day. We were a startup. We were 1 year old. Between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Boom, all the tickets had gone. And it was a madhouse. I remember going to the airport to meet Crystal Palace 2 days before they arrived because they were here training. And Alan Pardew, their coach at the time, was like, I picked him up at the airport, introduced myself, and he's like, so how many tickets have you sold for this game? I said, it's sold out. I said, how big's your stadium? It's 35,000 people. And he was like, 35,000 people? That's bigger than Sellers Park in Crystal Palace. I'm like, I know. Welcome to Cincinnati. And honestly, it was a dream. The week was like just a madness, a madhouse. But that launched us because when the whole of Cincinnati came to see that game, and we played all right. I think Crystal Palace won 2-0, but all their best players were playing, Zaha and everybody. We done pretty well. It was just a celebration. And after that, all bets were off. Wild.
So obviously there's a ton of excitement and a ton of emotion, I'm sure. But at any point, was all of that overwhelming? You know, was it at any point it felt like too much, or was it just a wave that you were confidently riding?
I think it was all of it has just been kind of a wild, crazy journey where things just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And honestly, behind the scenes, it's just been in the early years, a scramble just to make sure that we could always keep everything professional and online and doing it the right way. And it's just been a wild journey for all of us that have been with the club through everything, just to keep everything moving. And then we had the US Open Cup run in 2017, where we had an amazing run to the semi-finals. We had ESPN covering our games at Nippert Stadium. We were selling out in the US Open Cup, 35,000 people. And every step just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But at times, yeah, there's been some moments of I wouldn't say being overwhelmed, but as, you know, the first employee, having seen everything from the start, you know, when you walk into your $400 million stadium and we're about to play against Inter Miami and Messi, I sometimes have to think to myself, how the hell have we done this? Do you know what I mean? I literally just do. And I may have that thought and no one else does, but I know I do. I'm like, how the hell have we pulled this off? Do you know what I mean? And honestly, like I said, I'm going to write a book one day if I'm still around.
Yeah, there's not many people that can say they've helped build a brand new stadium and a brand new state-of-the-art training facility. What kind of went into the thoughts behind those places? Because getting those places is no small task. You've got to figure out exactly where you want to go, how you're going to get the land, and obviously the design. What were you guys looking at for those two places?
Well, the training center, the Mercy Health Training Center, which we call MHTC, it was essential because our first 3 years we operated out of Nippert Stadium, and operating in the middle of a college campus. You guys have been to college, you know what a college campus is like. It's kind of wild at certain times of the year, and trying to get all your players in, getting all your players out, doing meals and everything. There's no way we could function like that as a major league soccer club. So we knew we had to build a training center. I probably covered every blade of grass in Cincinnati looking for a space, and we landed in this area, Milford, which is a lovely town. It's about 20 miles outside the city, which was good. We wanted it to be peaceful and kind of quiet. And for us, the training center, you know, you guys both played soccer as well. You know that's your home. The stadium is where we go 17 times a year, 20 times a year for games. The training center is the home for the players. This is where we're 250 days of the year we're out here. So we just wanted to make sure we build something at the top end, because when you think about players, they really value the training center. It's where they go to work. It's where they build relationships. It's where they get their nutrition taken care of, their sports performance and health and athletic training. So we've just worked really hard to create something pretty special here. I think we've got one of the better training centers in the country, because players talk, and, you know, I know that players around the league speak highly of FC Cincinnati, the way we look after the players, the environment we put them in. And we've been fortunate to host US men's national team games in Cincinnati, and the national team trains at our training center like for 5 days preceding a game. So you've got the best players in America walking around our training center, eating in our cafeteria, using our locker room, playing on our great fields. Those players are talking. I know for a fact some of the highest profile US men's players have been like, I cannot believe the facilities Cincinnati has. But that helps us find players, because the reputation of the club is pretty good. So you can see now in the last 2 or 3 years, we're able to make some higher level signings. Like we've just signed Miles Robinson from the US men's national team. And, you know, he was here for those men's national team camps. So we kind of had a good feeling about how we go about our business. So yeah, you know, one of my main roles now is managing the training center, and it's a joy to be out here. I mean, we've got great people, great coaches. We have a great culture. We have a laugh and a joke. But, you know, the head coach, Pat Noonan, GM, Chris Albright, everyone kind of works together to make sure this is it's business, it's intense, but it's also a fun environment.
That result of being able to attract players that have come from the national team camps, was that a thought at the beginning of if we can build it to be such a high level facility that might happen, or did that just happen to happen and that was okay, let's lean into this?
My guiding principle was I want to be able to sign any single player in the world. So think Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, and we walk them through our training center, and those guys are like, I like this. This is quality. You know, so that was the guiding principle, is that we want to be super proud of where we're bringing the players every day. And, you know, the ownership here backed us with investment. I think that was key. And I think we're reaping the rewards of it now, because our team has excellent athletic training, great sports performance, the cafeteria here, the nutrition that we have, just the environment really helps us. So it puts us in a really strong position.
Yeah. So I think, obviously, leaning into my next question, I think that is likely going to be a big part of the answer from you. But when the club joined USL, right, there was immediate success, you know, on the pitch, off the pitch. And then as it got into the MLS, you know, the first 3 seasons were really what you would expect, I guess, from a new club. You know, a few bottom of the conference finishes. But then 2022, there was this propel to halfway up the standings. And then obviously last year, everyone knows what happened with finishing first and getting into the semi-final of the Cup. So what were some of those big things, you know, between 21 and 22 that made that first jump? And then obviously the massive, huge step to finishing top.
Well, I think, you know, people don't really realize about FC Cincinnati is that we were awarded an MLS franchise in 2018, in like May, June of that year, to start in 2019. So we only had, I think, 5 or 6 months to prepare for MLS. That's unheard of. Like most teams, most clubs, you know, if you go to a city like LAFC or St. Louis, they had years to prepare. Atlanta United had years to prepare for this, whereas we were given like, you're playing next year. So it was like, okay, and at that time we were going to try and win the USL championship as well. So it's kind of a lot of moving parts. So I'd say, number one, the time we had to transition from the USL to MLS was crazy. 6 months is nowhere near enough. You need at least 18 months, I think. And so, but we, you know, beggars can't be choosers. We were in and we had to take it. So that contributed to a slow start. And the other part of it is, I think we learned maybe a harsh lesson in that one of the advantages we have now is we have a GM and technical staff that have got enormous Major League Soccer experience. MLS is its own kind of standalone league, if you want to think, with the salary cap and the travel between games. And one thing I think we learned, and that's no disrespect to the people we had before. We had a GM from the Netherlands and coaches from the Netherlands, and they were great people, and they worked tremendously hard. But at the end of the day, this is MLS. And then Chris comes in, Albright, who knows the league. He has all the relationships. And then you bring in Pat Noonan, who as a head coach, who's played his whole career basically here. And then now we have this experience of understanding the league and the intricacies of the league and which players fit well here and what styles of play work in this league. And I would say we were ready. Chris and Pat came in at the perfect moment. We had the infrastructure built. The stadium was built. The training facility was built. We then had 3 years under our belt. So there were some good players in the mix on the roster. Do you know what I mean? But Chris and Pat were just the perfect people at the right time to come in and take it to the next level. And that's what we've done. You know, they've made good signings, but we've built a culture now. We've got chemistry, and anything can happen in soccer. I mean, you've got to be humble. Any team's 2 or 3 losses away from a tough time, right? And sport is sport. But I think now we've got the infrastructure in place. So it was just ready. We made the right choice with Chris and Pat for sure. And now we're in a good spot, but you have to stay humble. It's a new season. many new challenges. Other teams are spending a lot of money as well. So you know, we're in the mix now, though. We're a good team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think when I'd assume, right, every team at the start of every season wants to win the league. I think whether it's on a whiteboard somewhere or someone's head, every team, no matter what their year before looked like, wants to win the league. But at what point did winning an MLS Cup, because I assume it is now, top priority? So when did that become the number one soccer goal?
I think it's always been there. We're ambitious. We have always had high expectations of ourselves and to win at a big level. So, you know, last year was amazing. We won the Supporters Shield, which was great. It was our second trophy because we won the USL regular season as well in 2018. But you know, at the end of the season, Columbus Crew played a great game in the Eastern Conference Final, and you know, that's football, that's soccer. You have to sometimes take it on the chin and you move on. But you know, I would say that's probably our goal as a club. And whether it happens in 2024 or in the future, I don't think we're ever going to not have the expectation to be competitive, make the playoffs, try and win. But as we all know, as fans of this game, it's a tough business, right? So we have high expectations and high goals, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm sure there's probably in the league 10 to 15 teams that today all think they can legitimately win MLS Cup. And I would like to think we are one of those teams, but you only have to look at what Inter Miami are doing down there. I mean, they basically signed Barcelona's squad from 6-7 years ago. I mean, they're going to be pretty good. So, but they're not the only team. It's going to be very, very competitive. But we feel we'll be in the mix.
Yeah, definitely. You guys have done an incredible job over the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years or so of building the culture, the stadium, and the team, the staff, everything. You like you've been touching on the infrastructure from day one to now has changed completely, and you guys have done an incredible job of not just doing it but getting it right. Um, as a lot of people can see from the success on the field, it doesn't come from just the players being good. It obviously comes from the club being good and everybody putting in what they can. One of the things that I have is as a fan, obviously you talked about the Bailey before and how the Bailey's been there since the days at Nippert. Now, obviously, there's also the march coming from the city into the stadium. What do the fans of FCC kind of have to look forward to? Because you guys have done such a good job of making the fan experience amazing.
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, I'm a Liverpool fan, so the Bailey for us, which is our supporter section behind the goal, that's the Kop. Do you know what I mean? That's the Kop at Anfield. That's where our most, I won't want to say our most passionate fans, but our supporter groups are behind the goal, and that's to me the goal has always been is to make our home stadium. It's not a stadium; it should be like a cathedral. When you go to the best stadiums in the world, it's an experience. It's something that it's not about fireworks. It's not about music. Is when you walk into Anfield and they're singing, the fans are singing, "You'll Never Walk Alone." Money can't buy that. That's in your heart. That's spiritual. Do you know what I mean? It's a cathedral of dreams that you can create in a city, and that's always been my thought is that we're selling ourselves short. You know, I don't like stadiums that don't have character. I like stadiums that have a feel and a character to them, and that's what I think we're creating at TQL is our own, like, nobody wants to come and play us at TQL. Do you know what I mean? Because when the Bailey's full and with the noise and the atmosphere and the passion come together, that's what it's all about. So it's to me, it's a feeling that you have. It's, you know, people can lose sleep over, you know, the game day presentation and the fireworks and the music and all that's important, but it's not as important as the people. The people are what makes it. The people who pay to come into your stadium, you got to treat them right. And yeah, I think we've always done a really good job of that. There's a passion, there's a soul, I think, to FC Cincinnati that we've been able to capture through the ups and downs because you were young lads, but you learn in life there's ups and downs, and sometimes that's all right. You know, we lost the Eastern Conference final, but does that make our fans love us more? Maybe. You know, we won 3 wooden spoons. We have that. We can't shake that. But does it make the fans love us more as the underdog? Maybe. You know, so I always say is that when we're all together, we're pretty hard to beat, and that's what we've got now. And yeah, I'm really proud of everything we've built.
I think on that note of there being ups and downs, which I think happens in any business, any organization, but one where the end product that people see are other humans on a football pitch. I think everyone can see from the outside as fans and people who watch the sport what the highs and the lows might be on the pitch. And I would assume a lot of the highs are correlated with what's happening on the pitch, off the pitch, operationally. But what have been some of the lowest lows that you've gone through as an operational staff?
The hardest was COVID, because we opened up this building, this training center, like 3 weeks before COVID hit. So we had all these grand plans for it to be this great, you know, this citywide, you know, we've got this beautiful training center, come and visit us. And then COVID hit, and then no one was basically to go in and out. The players, obviously, and staff were here, but no one else was able to come here for 18 months. And the most heartbreaking thing I think FCC's ever had was our final year at Nippert Stadium, 2020. Should have been a celebration of what we achieved at Nippert Stadium, but unfortunately all the games were behind closed doors, so it was empty, and those were difficult. But just all the necessary but COVID restrictions were really tough to enforce. You're new in MLS, you're onboarding all these new staff, you've got all these new rules and regulations, and you top off that, you open a training center, you're building a $400 million stadium, and at the same time there's a global pandemic. You know, that was a pretty challenging 18 months, I will say.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, just to say the least. Just COVID was kind of a dark period for pretty much everybody, and I can't imagine that it made anything easy for a new club, especially a club that's kind of coming up and finding its way. And kind of speaking about things out of your control, one of the things that I know a little bit about, one of the things that I know you guys have been doing over the last few weeks is to mitigate the weather. The weather in Cincinnati, I don't know if a lot of people know, it fluctuates a lot. When I was out there in the summer, it was sunny, 96, 97, 80, 90% humidity. And obviously, like you said earlier today, it's 18 degrees. Last week, it was down to like 9, 10 degrees, and you got your first snow. What kind of are you guys doing as an organization to kind of deal with the weather?
Yeah, I mean, that's part you talk about operationally. That's my job, is that, you know, I'm the vice president of soccer operations. So, you know, on the first day of pre-season, I can't have Pat Noonan walk into the building and go, okay, we've got 3 inches of snow and it's 10 degrees below freezing. What are we doing for training? I have to have a plan. That's what I have to do. So we were really fortunate. We have good connections with the Cincinnati Bengals. Last year they built an indoor facility, and we were able to work with them to set that up. So last week, our first week of training, you couldn't train outdoors in Cincinnati. It was so cold, so much snow. So we organized with the Bengals that we had their indoor facility for like 4 hours a day in the morning. So we'd have the players come to the training center, have their breakfast, get changed in our locker rooms. Then we'd bus everybody like 20 minutes down to the Cincinnati Bengals. We'd train, back on the bus, back to the training center for lunch, and do all the video and the strength and sports performance stuff. So last week was, you know, a big challenge, but we navigated it pretty well. Fortunate that we were able to use that facility. And now this week, the team's heading down to Clearwater, Florida for like 4 weeks of warm weather training, which is exactly what everyone needs. Never think there are no problems. There are always problems, let me tell you.
Yeah, I think one of the big things we didn't chat about yet is your previous role. You know, obviously now you're kind of in that perfect mix of with the players, with the front office. But before, we know it was all game ops was like the big thing. And obviously, as I said before we jumped on, you know, I used to be in the front office of a NISA club that played not at a college, but at a high school stadium.
Yeah.
So we had very minimal things to do, but it still felt like a lot going on. You know, we had 4 full-time staff. So take us back to, kind of what the week leading up to an old home game used to look like, both at Nippert and how that kind of changed at TQL. And then I think really that last 48, 24 hours of, okay, kickoff's coming up. What did it look like back then? And, what were you doing? What were the staff doing to get ready for a game?
So the week leading up to it's a great question. The week leading up to a home game, there's soccer operations and then the stadium operations. So on the soccer operation, it was making sure we had daily training, the meals, making sure the timing was good and that everyone was in a good position. The stadium operation was different. We had to work with the University of Cincinnati, and what I would always kind of host 4 days before the game. So think a Wednesday before a Saturday home game, we'd like have an all staff meeting on the campus of University of Cincinnati. There was probably 110, 125 people in those meetings. When you think ticket takers, concession workers, security, you name it. And I'd kind of lead that meeting and go down the list of making sure everything is ready to go in all these different areas, which I had no experience of doing that, but sometimes the best way to learn is just to do it. And my personality, as it turns out, has been pretty good for those situations. I'm a pretty good communicator, speak quite well, and I think my accent gives off the impression that I know what I'm talking about, even when I don't. So I play up to that a little bit. But and then a really tough part of Nippert Stadium was one, transitioning sometimes a football field with football lines, scrubbing the lines off. And we obviously brought in people to do that professionally, but that could take 3 days and you had to have perfect weather. And like I said earlier, there were times where it went right up to the wire, where it was like an hour before kickoff, we were still painting the soccer lines on the field, which is crazy. But then, it's just making sure you have all the different facets ready. And then the big thing for Nippert Stadium was securing the facility. So we would have to place bike rack around the entire facility 24 hours before the game and have security in place overnight so that we could maintain kind of the sanctity of the stadium atmosphere. So we were fortunate. We worked a lot with the University of Cincinnati and in their operations staff. I became very good friends with them because we worked together so closely. But game days were full on. It just took it, especially those early years at Nippert for 3 years. It just completely took over my life for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there were, thinking back to my own experience of that small scale, there are things now I'm sure you can look back and laugh at, mistakes you guys made or things you just didn't see coming. But what were some of those things that happened from a game off standpoint that just
I could tell
the overwhelming moments?
The overwhelming moments. I can tell you when we hosted Crystal Palace and I looked down from where I was stood to the amount of people that were in that stadium. I thought to myself, there isn't one more person that can fit in this stadium. That was an overwhelming moment, let me tell you, when we had about 17 people working for the club. But one that always I remember is that we used to have some banners covering certain sections of the stadium that said FC Cincinnati, like tarps, to make sure that, it kind of enclosed it, because we thought that we would never need the upper deck of one of the sections because we just didn't realize we'd sell all those tickets. And I remember me and one of our ticket sales guys were going back and forth saying, for this game, we were selling so many tickets, I need to bring the tarps down. And he was like, no, keep the tarps up. It makes it look amazing. I was like, no, we got to bring the tarps down. In the end, we went with him because we wanted to create that atmosphere. But so many people came to the game buying tickets on game day is that they were going up to the tarp section and sliding down. And it was just like a riot was going on in the facility. And I remember saying to him, if we ever have this situation before again, I can promise you I won't even ask you. The tarps are coming down. So that was wild. And it's like, this game's on ESPN and there's people sliding down the tarps. And I'm like, I just got to make it out of here alive,
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think, next thing I'd love to know is if you could go back, knowing everything you know now about the early days, the transition, the success on the pitch and off the pitch, aside from things you can control, right? Like COVID and anything else is just not in your control. What are some things that if you go back and started all over again that you would do differently?
So really, that's an amazing question. I've never even everything's happened so fast. I don't even I've ever thought about that. Do you know what? I got to tell you, like, we haven't been perfect. Nothing's perfect in life. We've made our mistakes, but I think we've always had the right intentions to everything we've done. I don't think we've done things for the wrong reasons. So like everything we've done has just become part of this wild, crazy journey. And one thing I love is that it's not perfect, because I think sometimes things that are perfect, they're not as fun, they're not as relatable. People don't love things that are perfect. You know, maybe our imperfections over the years of what people like about us. Do you know what I mean? And so there's things we've done wrong. There's mistakes we've made along the way. But everything we did, I think, had the right intentions. And when you've got the right intentions, normally it kind of people understand and it works out in the end. So, yeah, it's been a crazy journey. I don't think we could change anything. I think we'd be fools to change anything because, you know, we are where we are, and it's a pretty wild ride after 9 years.
Definitely, yeah, exactly. You might not be where you're at right now if you changed one small thing back in 2019. You know,
Exactly. Like every step along the way, we've just made these good decisions that have kind of been fortunately have gone in our favor, and we're lucky. We have a brilliant city behind us. We have great ownership. We've got unbelievable fan base, and we just got to try and keep it going.
yeah. Well, before we finish off, I think just the last thing is right now. Obviously, the league starts next month. As you said, the guys are heading off for a few weeks of nice weather. So, what does this period of your life look like from a work standpoint of month leading up to the season kicking off, and then it's, you know, schedules go out the window, and it's sail, you know, create the boat as you sail it. But what does this next month look like for you?
Well, this is the preparation month. We've done a lot of preparation for the season already, but this is kind of the final preparation month. And I have a saying, like, when the players come back from Clearwater, the ship leaves the harbor and it ain't coming back. So we better be ready. Do you know what I mean? And all the staff that work for me, you know, I'm just an honest guy. I tell everybody the truth. And and I have brilliant people that work on my team. I'm really fortunate to have everybody, but there's no way you can operate this for 11 months, 10 months of the season if the plan isn't in place. Like when the players get back and the season starts and we play that first home game, like we're up and running, you know, and you just don't have time to kind of reinvent the wheel at that point. So in our world of operations, planning and preparation is really, really important. That we lost against the Crew on December the 2nd, and you know, a lot of the players and technical staff, they do an extra few days and then they all take a break. Not us. We kept grinding through December, had a short break for Christmas, and then we're back in January because you have to be ready. And it's like things like last week we got a curveball, right? The weather. But I have to be ready for that. I have to be ready to make sure that when our players show up, we've got somewhere to practice. So again, that's not just me, that's our whole staff. But yeah. That's what I say. Sometimes I feel my job is like navigating the ship all the way through back to harbor, but that's at the end of the season. Do you know what I mean? We set sail and then we got to get this thing all the way through. And there's lots of ups and downs. Just got to keep going, you know?
Yeah. No. Well, I have a lot of confidence. Obviously, I get the good insight from David, but I have a lot of confidence that this year is going to be an even bigger one for you guys. So I'm excited to watch from the West Coast in the nice warm weather all year round.
Well, hopefully, man. I hope we do well. And thank you both. I really enjoyed that. It was nice to go down memory lane a little bit and think about some of these things. Maybe I mentally blocked some stuff, and now it's all going to come flooding back, you know?
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Dan. It was amazing getting to hear everything from you because obviously you've got experience at every single level. You've been taking your journey, and the whole time the popularity of the sport has been growing. So we just want to say kind of thank you for everything that you've done, and thanks for coming on.
Oh, a pleasure was all mine. Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Off the Pitch. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to drop us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. Your support truly means the world to us, and it helps us bring you more of the stories that you love from the business world of soccer. And if you have a moment, please also drop us a rating or a review, as it helps us understand what you like, and it also helps other like-minded individuals find this podcast. See you in the next episode.